The 6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 25. Ready? Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona, this is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria. Today, I am joined by Nick Cavuoto, good friend of mine and brilliant marketer. Nick, at an early age, developed his smart marketing methodology, and he's actually been working with Fortune 500 brands and tech startups. Like, that's where Nick and I connect because we have similar backgrounds there. But he also, during that process, been coaching executives who basically feel completely lost in today's digital marketplace. So today, he really works with these purpose-driven entrepreneurs, probably like a lot of you are in the audience, to master their marketing, accelerate growth, increase their influence, and really just profit quickly. So Nick, thank you so much for being on the show. We're so thrilled to have you.
Of course, man. Absolutely. It's a privilege. Thank you, Frank. And like I've said to you, but I'll say to your audience as well. I mean, I've worked in a lot of different spaces with a lot of smart people. And the way that you present what you do and how you do it is so exceptional. I mean, working with companies that are, Microsoft, Pandora, Paychex, I mean, these are really big organizations. Yet you bring such a unique gift set to the table. And specifically when it comes to product marketing, that was the niche that I spent time in those brands. And nobody explains it to the level of clarity that you do. And I'm just honestly proud to be here on this conversation with you. And also just really thankful for your influence in my life and what you've done for me. And also what you're doing for everybody else on this call here today. So
thank you very much. That's really like, I don't even know where to take the conversation from here. I feel like we're closed down on that. No, I really appreciate that. And I mean, the reason you're here is because you are like one of the best in the world at what you do. So we really want to dig into that. No more about me. Let's talk about you. I'm all like good. Blushing now. So, okay. But all right, let's talk about actually who you're working with now. You talk about purpose-driven entrepreneurs. First of all, who is that? How would they, like, if they were walking down the street and bumping into you, how would they know that you're their guy to help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, in my career, as my career advanced, and then I kind of spent some time outside of just working with larger companies, I just realized that, being a dad and a husband and a father and, really being driven by a lot of my core ethics and just my foundational principles as a person, I think those points of alignment, our stories connect us in such a beautiful way. And I think that with the people that we're working with, my goal is really to just say something to them that they're thinking, but nobody else is saying. And I think that allows us to connect on a really foundational level about the things that we care about most in this world. And as we do that, our worldviews end up matching. And I believe that it starts with your story, it goes to your beliefs and your values, and then your actions are inspired and taken off of those three things. So, really looking at the story, it's going to come down to the principles and the way that someone believes what they believe and why they believe it. And then we start getting into the process that might be broken, that's holding them back from, their full impact or freedom that they're looking for. And then that, of course, translates into the smart marketing methodology, and then they take inspired action. So the way that someone's going to bump into me, it's probably digitally first. And honestly, it's just, I'm looking for like-minded people who want to co-create, who want to create something amazing and not sacrifice their family in the process of doing that.
Yeah, so that's an important element, it sounds like. I mean, you've mentioned family a number of times, and I'm a dad, so I totally get that, that oftentimes there's this conflict between, your family responsibilities and entrepreneurship. It's funny. I remember like in one of the very first, so after we sold off a first tech company and we were going for another round we were going for seed funding for a new firm. One of the venture capitalists who I was working with, actually based here in Phoenix, one of the few guys who actually goes back and forth between San Francisco and Phoenix. And I remember him sitting me down because I was in my early 30s, I think at the time. And he said to me, there's a high correlation between entrepreneurship and divorce. Like
Hmm.
it was like this big warning. And like in my case, I am divorced. So like it happened, and I can see like all of the mistakes that I made along the way that like kind of helped precipitate that. But it was just this sad warning. And all I could think about was like, man, does it really have to go down like that? Like, I don't, why is that the way it has to go? And then even if you talk about marriage, like the children involved, like, why is that the way it is? And even though I had those feelings, like at the beginning, I found myself getting sucked into the vortex. When I was like elite status on 3 different airlines in the United States, because I was like never home, like I realized like I got sucked into the vortex. And I bet a lot of people see that. I don't know. My father always told me like no one's completely worthless. At least they can serve as a bad example. So maybe that's me. But I see a lot of like up and coming entrepreneurs, and I think that's kind of the folks you're talking to who can see that like in advance and don't want to get sucked into that vortex.
100%, man. My dad, when I was a kid, at 10 years old, I was helping him clean corporate buildings, emptying trash cans. I mean, my dad has an 8th grade education. He, really has had to hustle his whole life and push and push and grind and grind. He was at every game, like all that stuff was all good. But I think the biggest challenge was that he wasn't emotionally present. And the challenge with that is, as a kid, you kind of have until at like 7, 8 years old. And my first memory is my parents arguing over money. Yeah. That's the first thing I remember as a kid. And so when you still really start looking back at your story, right? Our stories connect us. When you start looking back at your story and you realize like, I don't want to have those same triggers for my kids. I don't want them to be worried about financial things. I don't want, other people's marriages to be on the cusp of divorce, right? Because these money stressors or these like, solving what is it you want to do in the world, like all these things, those questions need to be answered ahead of time. And so, like the hustle and grind and push thing, I think that's important for a season of your life. But, it's really looking back and saying, what do I want to accomplish? And what do I want to be known for? I want to be known because of what I did for others. And so foundationally for me, it's not about creating an empire. It's about making an impact that has to do with depth, not width. I don't care to work with everybody on the planet. I care to work with people who really care about the things that I care about, which is my family and, the work that I do, like legacy from the perspective of not like who's going to show up at my funeral, but like, I just want to know that when I wake up every day that I'm doing something that really matters. And that was kind of the challenge with Fortune 500. You're part of the greater machine, right? But you're not necessarily, making that massive individual impact that you can reach out and touch. So people who are in that transformational space, who really care about impacting the world around them and want to make a lot of money doing it as a byproduct of doing what you love well, those people and I will jive really, really well together.
Yeah.
So,
I can sense that. I mean, and like from a marketing perspective, like digging into process for a second, of course, like what you're talking about is a much deeper process than I think most marketing consultants would start. I mean, everyone starts with sort of that avatar conversation or even like the why, but your focus on story seems to be a number of levels deeper. I mean, there are definitely people who are sort of story coaches or, getting clear on your story and stuff like that. But you seem to be leveraging this in a much more both tactical as well as strategic way in the marketing piece that I guess other people might sort of, brush on by.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, Frank. I think there's 5 steps to the process. Number 1, there has to be a strong foundation. And your foundation is going to even come around to like, why do you believe the things that you believe when it comes to marketing? It's not just about you as an entrepreneur and making sure that your mind is in the right place to plan for the journey. One of the best books I ever read was called The First 90 Days. And it talked about CEOs when they transition, they have to actually emotionally prepare their families to say, hey, daddy's not going to be home as much for the next 90 days. You prep your wife, you don't go on that journey without them. And so you have to look back at the foundation and say, am I building on something that stands on solid ground, that's going to withstand the storms of entrepreneurship? And if you're not, well, you're going to be hell-bent on achieving the goals and the things you want to do in the world without having some type of sacrifice that's going to come in the form of your family. I'm all cool with you sacrificing the time with your friends and getting beers with your buddies in order to build a business. But the minute that you put your wife or kids on that chopping block is when things really start to go downhill. And I did it, Frank. Right. I built a 7-figure business, multiple 7-figure business, almost went crazy and lost my mind and almost lost my wife and my kids in the process. And that was less than 5 years into our marriage. So now that we're expecting our 3rd kid, so I guess that's the general announcement for that. Now that we are,
congratulations.
But now that we are, it's like, I know how to build it this time different. I went all the way up to just go all the way back down and to then have to rebuild it again. So, I think at the end of the day, number 1 is the foundation. Number 2, of course, is the product. You've got to be clear on the outcome. And this is something that you and I worked on together. Frank's the best person in the world to learn this stuff from. But there was a lot of adaptation of us understanding what we do and why we do it and how we can do it better that we learned from you. And when it comes to the outcome that you produce, it's so much more powerful than just thinking about the product. It just flips the whole thing around. It's that value-based infrastructure saying, number 1, what is the outcome that we want to produce for the person? What do they need? And then we build in our exact product thereafter. And so that's a special part of what we do just because it's fundamental when it comes to marketing. But it is a necessary step. And the 3rd thing is content, which a lot of people struggle to understand how to implement it in the right way. And so through my relationship with Scott Olford, really learned how to develop content in the right way. And also through a lot of different people on copywriting and stuff. So we go through really mapping out your message and understanding exactly what you're doing to solve that problem that you talk about in stage 2. Stage 3 is content. Stage 4 is automation. And again, this is where a lot of people get it wrong, is they create a product and they don't automate the follow-ups or they don't automate the email. They don't, right? All this stuff happens. And then you get to step 5 and you get to your actual advertising. And most people think they have an issue advertising. So that's step 5. What they realize when they work with us is, oh my goodness, I actually ignored steps 1 through 4.
Right.
And so I've hired 15 marketing people and I can never solve the problem. Well, it's because you're not hiring the right marketing people who actually understand what the issue is.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who are marketing experts out there, but there's very few who have worked in organizations that are large enough to have the reputation to say, hey, I've generated $30 million in revenue for the people I've worked with. And on top of that, generated over 100,000 leads. That's a power play to say, we know what we're doing and we know how to not only take you from a great idea, but to full implementation and then launch. And so we do that for a few different verticals, but our main thing, of course, is we've got to be aligned fundamentally on the way that we see the world together. And that creates really a great relationship and friendship that we carry through business for a long time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it is funny where, the end stage is the advertising where so many people sort of start with that, oh, I got, I gotta write an ad. I gotta go figure out where that is and ignore all the rest of that. It's fascinating. You've got it in the right spot. So that's great. Yeah. 100%, man. So as you're working with folks, what you're doing sounds like, what you could look at it and go, well, that sounds like traditional agency work, kind of marketing agency work. But, most people who get into agency work end up getting sort of slammed with time and not being able to get all the stuff done that you want to get done. How are you working with folks that's kind of different than that standard agency model, or are you?
Yeah, no, dude, that's a great question. I think marketing agencies are going to die very quickly. They already are, unless you're on Madison Avenue, like respect if that's you.
Right.
But those who aren't, the point of entry to the market, when you look at the variable costs of differentiation between myself and someone else for both agency owners, it's going to be really, really hard because, the Ty Lopez's and Dan Henry's of the world have said, hey, buy my $1,000 course and you can charge $1,000. So the value of a marketing product when it comes to agency style services is actually on a steep decline. And so if you're listening to this and that's what you're doing, I would highly encourage you to continue down that model, but do something very unique. Like I see a lot of content curators who now will also push out your advertising. Respect, that's a good idea. But if it's lead gen focused, it can be a very challenging space if you're not working with multiple 7 or 8 figure, 9 figure businesses. That's a word of caution, but a word of excitement, because there are new and different things. You just need to make sure you're innovating. But I guess on the back end of that, the reason why we're not an agency is because we want to take you through a process of learning, of developing a relationship, which involves conversation and mentorship and holds you accountable to the things, of course, that you want to accomplish in the world. But we're going to do that in a shortened cycle. So our goal is to solve the advertising issue, but in the proper order. So if you're not generating leads today, if you're not getting great engagement, if you're not, producing content that's really impacting the people who you serve, we can solve that in a very short cycle because it's very pointed, the outcomes are very clear, and we can get you to the finish line. However, after that, this is where we're very unique, is we've developed with a partner who's a big CRM player. We've developed the whole back end to ensuring that you can accomplish what you need to accomplish for advertising, but have access to experts who can help you solve the bigger problems. So if you need access to a copywriter, then we have a copywriter who can help you. It's more of this on-demand approach to support with a SaaS product attached to it.
Yeah.
So our CRM is really the powerful infrastructure of 30 days worth of your content, always hitting out through email, SMS, Facebook bots, Facebook Messenger. So that the people you are attracting and that you are connecting with, you have an opportunity to stay in touch with them over a longer period of time. See, most people only go after the 9s and 10s. People are hot, ready to buy, ready to purchase, and they ignore the 1 through 8. So if you're asking yourself, how do I increase revenue? It's not by generating more leads that are just going to convert at 9 and 10. It's by setting the infrastructure up the right way the first time so that you can nurture someone who's a 1 and take them to a 10 and then close them out on the back end. So this is a long play. This is building your business the right way. And, in a short amount of time, we can repair the part of the business that's broken when it comes to sales and marketing. But the benefit is that you have way more business opportunity now because the entire cycle is now operating correctly. So that's what we do. That's why it's different. So we have very specific things that we're going to help you with. But this is a partnership. We both bring 100% and we get you to the finish line 100%.
Very nice. I mean, it's basically the embodiment of your automation phase. Is putting that system in place. You bring up a really good point around the 9s and 10s, because a lot of people, again, with their advertising is focused very much on like finding the words that are going to convert that person, get them on the phone and sell really quickly. But the thing that people don't take into consideration is that 9 and 10 leads are expensive. They're the more expensive ones to buy. You want to buy cheaper leads, buy the 1s, 2s, 3s, and then take the time to actually work with them. That actually turns out to be long-term cheaper than continuing to buy 9s and 10s. And I actually don't think you can scale that way mathematically at all. I think you have to go to the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s and build up those relationships if you want to scale a business. That just is my opinion. But I think it's just mathematically impossible.
And not to mention, Frank, but I think you would agree on this. It can be actually way more profitable as well to take people through those steps because you're indoctrinating them in the process. Right. They're believing the things that you believe. You're taking them through the principles that they believe. You're taking them through the process that's broken. You're taking them through the strategy that's going to fix their broken problem, right? And then you're going to bring them to inspired action. And how much more valuable is someone who's ready to take inspired action versus somebody who is still kind of stuck in the mud and not sure if they actually want to convert or not, right? So we live in this kind of space of where we just assume that everything can be so transactional if we don't really understand the principles of how digital marketing works. And so everything becomes like, how do I just e-com? How do I just, scale to 100K in a month?
Right.
The reality is that's not how you scale relationships. And if you do, you're an asshole, right? It's like the guy who sees the girl and just like, nice shoes, that is not a way to do business. So right. People respect the fact when you take time to create a relationship first, if that's the people who you want to serve.
Right. And
it's a totally different style of relationship and engagement when it comes to, I think, serving at the highest level.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say the nice shoes thing, because that always like pissed me off when I was in the airports all the time. Like the shoe shine guys would want to try to get me over there. And their sales pitch was always like, your shoes look horrible. You look crappy. Like you're going to go to an interview that way. And I'm like, seriously, that's how you're going to do this? Like, I want to dirty up my shoes and walk by you one more time just to piss you off. That's so funny.
That's awesome.
So So the automation and the system implementation piece is the long-term play. Is that sustainable from a scalability perspective? In other words, how can you guys get multiple clients on board when you're doing sort of system integration, system implementation issues? Is that something you guys have kind of figured out how to move people on?
Yeah, you know, we work with different applications that have, I think now, over 50,000 integrators. So even if you have unique systems, our CRM has everything from sales pipeline, to, I'm classically trained through HubSpot over 10 years ago. So for me, like it's a very similar.
So funny you say classically trained on HubSpot. That's so marketing.
Yeah,
classically trained. That's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, dude. So it's good though, man, because the fundamentals of that are tried and true, through guys at MIT and Harvard. I mean, those are guys, of course, we want to listen to, and they've done a great job at really launching this whole idea. So, we use that inbound structure. But yeah, I mean, here's the key, man. Like when it comes to automation in our program, so in that 90-day sprint, everything's being implemented into our system. And then when you get to the end, we're like, hey, you can either like go take these emails that are in a Word document and you could go like put them in your own Infusionsoft.
Right.
And remember that most people have a problem with implementation.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge. So in our program, we give them an option, right? Where we say like, hey, you want to plug this all into a system now, or do you want to go do it on your own? And what we've learned is that over 90% stick rate are like, oh, no, you guys have done so amazing up to this point. Like, I just want to put this in your hands. So we don't do the advertising piece unless it's a client who's handpicked. And then we work with them in that way. But for most people, we get all of the integration on the back end set up. We connect it to their ad provider, whoever's running their ads. And we kind of separate church and state there a little bit. We started as an ad agency a long time ago, but it's just not the space for us. We're way more interested in the transformational coaching and then offering services that align with consulting with experts, and then with a SaaS product attached to it that's going to make the biggest impact. So long-term play, 100%.
Oh, that's great. One last question for you, Nick. So
sure,
as people are, as you've built this up and scaled up this process, what's one thing you wish you had known at the beginning that would have made this whole thing a lot easier, that might speed the process for other folks?
That's a great question, man. I think there's like 20 things. So I'm just trying to pick the thing, the number one spot. I think I would have hired a lot of smart people before I went on the journey on my own. I mean, I am, like I told you guys at the beginning, my dad has an 8th grade education at 10 years old. I mean, I'm working my butt off, 17. I've been working 80 hours a week. It feels like since I was 17 years old. And so like, I really had to slow down on that to pay attention to my family. And that's one of the things I learned about building a multi-7-figure business is like, you cannot do that sustainably and not bring the right people around you. People, it always comes down to people.
Yeah.
So I wish I had met you a lot sooner. I wish that when I had certain calls with people who were in my space, who were leaders, and they're like, yeah, it's 16 grand for 2 days. I wish I would have taken them up on the opportunity. I think the number one miss that I had was, for the sake of trying to save whatever I wanted to try to re-infuse it into different parts of the business, I wish that I would have surrounded myself with like-minded people who could help me get to where I wanted to go. We had a bit of a roller coaster, man. We went like super, super high. We came down super, super low. We were on our way back up, and it's just done now in the right way. And I learned that from you. I learned that from Scott. I learned that from people who I surrounded myself with at the right time.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have infinite pocket change in my world, man, because you really helped me create something that not only is going to impact my family, but that of the people that I serve and those who are on my team. And so I just wish I would have known. I wish I would have done it sooner. So the better that you can get your message out about the things that you do and how you impact the world through the high ticket program, I think that, man, it's just, there's more marriages and lives and kids' lives to be repaired and fixed, and through the work that you're doing now, man. So that's the number one thing.
Well, I really appreciate that. That's again, really kind of you. But what you say is like a lesson I think a lot of us learn really late, which is that it's just best to start bringing people in who are smarter than us to help us build stuff. Like, I know a lot of entrepreneurs when they get started, they want to be the smartest person in the room. They really want to be like, I'm going to train up my people. I'm going to, they're going to be indoctrinated in my way of doing things. Like, I'm going to finally have a team that executes things my way. And I just think really good entrepreneurs are like, I know nothing. I want to bring in really smart people who are going to tell me the best way to do stuff. And it feels like those folks really make progress and really like move forward. When those people who get stuck in their own, you might luck out, you might have like the better mousetrap, but I just feel like most of us benefit from being around people who are smarter than us and getting that stuff done. That's good
For
stuff.
sure. I think humanity brings us objectivity. It's the best gift that we give to one another. And sometimes we can't see around the corner ourselves. We need someone to help, whether they're a blind spot detector or, whether they're going to help us see things the way that we need to see them. And it is important to have the right people around you. And, but yeah, man, 100%, totally agree with you. And I think that the return on investment, had I done that earlier, would have been exponentially higher than me doing it on my own. The return on investment, my family went into that ROI.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just money. Money is renewable, but missing my kid's bedtime multiple nights in a row, that's not.
Yeah. There are just some things you don't get back. Yeah.
It's true,
right.
Man.
That's totally true. Absolutely.
We just accept it and we say, okay, well then how do we move on in the future? How do we do it in a better way? Is there anything we can do to repair the broken road? And we do it. But yeah, that shit's just not worth it. It's just simply not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely.
Yeah,
man, we are out of time. Otherwise we would just continue this conversation, because I know you and I agree a lot on these things. We talk about, this would be a mutual admiration society for a while here, but unfortunately you're a busy guy, so we need to let you get back to work. For those people who in this conversation, Nick, have felt like, hey, this guy's talking about stuff I feel aligned with, how can they get in touch with you? What's the best way to kind of start that process off?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, the best way to do it is probably to hop over to my website. You can also find me on social anywhere, nickcavuoto.com. And on my site, there is a guide that we have available that talks about how I scaled the 7 secrets that I learned, really the 7 mistakes that I learned about scaling a 7-figure business. And so, if right now you have a brick and mortar, or you have a consultancy, or, if you're an expert, like medical expert or financial expert, these are some folks that we have helped in the past, and we can help you as well. So if you want to learn about scaling a business digitally, if you currently have a physical location, that's one person who we can really help. And then secondarily, if you feel like your marketing is broken, if you feel like you're doing random acts of marketing, you can check out on our website, the Smart Marketing Method, which will just tell you a little bit more around how to properly structure your marketing and advertising, and how it funnels into your sales process using 3 key principles. So just hop on over to our site, nickcavuoto.com. And yeah, there's 2 tabs at the top. Just pick which way you want to go.
Great. And that link is here below. If you're watching this either video or listening, the audio, if you're listening away from a device, come on over to the show notes page, and we get the link here as well, but it's nickcavuoto.com. Nick, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Absolute thrill. You really taught a lot about what is at stake if you get this wrong, which I think is really the critical piece here. So thank you very much for that.
100%, brother. Thank you, man. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you everyone for being with us today on this episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria. This has been a great masterclass, again, in what you need to change about how you're marketing, how you align with your story to make sure that you're putting the most important things first. And so for that, we thank Nick. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next time. All right, everyone, take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.